Well, hey there, folks. Chris McLean back again, Peak Performance and Transformation Coach, and here with another episode of the Peak Performance and Predictable Growth Show, the peak performance show for creative agency founders, owners, and leaders, where we dissect and explore the agency journey from the unique perspective of those at the coalface of the industry. And my guests help unlock strategies, tools, and tactics that are working right now in the trenches to help you deliver better results for your clients, as well as grow and scale your agency to 6 and 7 figures and beyond. And today it's my absolute pleasure to welcome on the show Craig Rodney, otherwise known as the Agency Coach. And since selling his social media agency Cerebra to WPP in 2013 and then subsequently exiting in 2016, Craig's been focused on coaching small to medium agencies to help them with growth and profitability. Craig, that sounds like an awesome story. I can't wait to get into it. Welcome on the show.
Thanks
for joining me
having me.
My pleasure. So take us back to your agency, sort of social media. How did that start? How did you get into that? And I'd love to take that journey all the way through that to where you're at today, including that exit piece. I think that'll be a real interesting discussion.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I started my first agency in 2002. I was 26 years old, arrogant beyond belief. I'd worked in a PR company for about 6 months or even less, and decided that I could do it way better than them, of course. I mean, they knew nothing about PR and technology and stuff like that. So I started a tech-focused PR company in 2002, and very quickly started signing like a string of really cool tech clients. Like I signed Symantec and Oracle, and then I signed a guy called Mark Shuttleworth, who's a South African tech entrepreneur guy and very famous locally. He was the first African in space as a space tourist, and that kind of opened all doors. And from there, we launched Google in South Africa. And I think on the back of the Google launch, we started getting a lot of interest as a small agency. But the world was moving towards social media. And so, and interestingly, because we were tech focused, we actually saw the tech of social media coming long before the comms revolution.
Yeah, right.
And so anyway, so I ended up going to a conference and listening to this other young guy, also super arrogant young guy, like I loved him, talking about blogging and the impact on the corporations and that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, this is where we got to go. So then his name was Mike Starforth, and Mike had actually just started Cerebra. And so I said to him, listen, like, we're going to head towards each other. You know, you're going to have to add traditional comms to be able to win bigger clients, and I have to add social to kind of start getting more diverse in the way we're going. So we decided, instead of competing, we merged. So at the end of 2010, we ended up merging and carrying on with the Cerebra name. And it went crazy, basically. Like we started signing like big kind of multinational brands. You know, we signed Samsung and Vodacom, and we then ended up signing Coca-Cola, and we started signing banks and like these big businesses. And the business started going. And Mike and I had like this really good dynamic in that we split our role, because we were kind of, you know, co-owners. We split our role straight down the line and went, Mike's responsible for anything to do with revenue, and I'm responsible for anything to do with profit. And so his job was to bring in the money, and my job was to make sure there was enough left at the end of the day. And that worked incredibly well. And we actually, as I said, we were only kind of running the business together for about 2.5 years before the acquisition talks, you know, the guys started coming knocking, interested in what we were doing. You know, social media was the early stages of this like massive wave coming, and all of the big network agencies saw the potential, and I guess they wanted to kind of make a play in that space. So we had conversations with a few guys, but we ended up having the most serious conversations with publicists. And we did negotiations with publicists for about 6 months. And as your intro said, that we sold to WPP, you're going to realize that there's a story here.
Story there.
Yeah. But so anyway, so we did 6 months of negotiations with publicists, and I mean, we ironed out everything. They did a full due diligence, you know, crossed every T, dotted every I, negotiated our PEs, like absolutely every single thing had been negotiated, document, decided. And it was waiting for signature from their side on the contracts before it came to us. Except at the exact time that they were trying to acquire us, they were trying to pull off that merger with Omnicom. And if anyone in the ad industry will remember, like all back in 2013, so they were trying to pull off this big merger to kind of compete with WPP, and so their M&A teams weren't looking at us. We were this tiny little business at the bottom of Africa. So we asked and asked and asked, and we just never got sent the contracts. And WPP found out that we were in these discussions. They thought that we'd sold, and so we got a phone call from them going, oh, "Have you guys sold to Publicis?" And we said, "Not yet. They haven't sent us the contract." And so they quite literally said, like, "We won't let you sell to Publicis. You're gonna come to WPP." And so, you know, again, the arrogance kicked in, and we were like, well, listen, if we're not negotiating, like we felt it would be bad faith to start renegotiating with Publicis. So we said to WPP, we said, listen, guys, we're not going to negotiate. You get an opportunity to make an offer, and if it's good, we'll take it, and if it's not, we'll just carry on with Publicis. And so they did. So they made an offer, and it was a very good offer. It was definitely an offer we couldn't refuse. And so we went with. Ended up going with WPP, but it took a week to conclude, finalize everything, and get paid. A week. We got the phone call. We got the phone call from WPP. I was down in Durban on the coast, having a pizza dinner with a friend of mine, and I got the phone call, and that was on a Tuesday night, and the following Tuesday the money cleared into our bank accounts.
Wow! After 6 months,
after 6 months,
up in a week. It's crazy.
Six months going with Publicis, and I mean, listen, when we broke the news to Publicis, they were obviously like irritated and upset. But we'd signed a 6-month letter of intent with them that had lapsed. So like they didn't even get the deal done within their 6 months. And as I said, it's understandable that happens. They had major things going on at the time, and it was unfortunate for them. But you know, we had to do what was best for us. And it worked out that way. So, but yeah, doing a 1 week deal is pretty hectic. Like it's the most intense thing I've ever done, and probably the most intense thing I will ever do, because I think if I ever had to do that again, I'd be more calm. You know, like selling your business and going through that it's quite hectic, and so you just go into this autopilot mode. And you go, like, once you've made the decision, you just enjoy the ride. The rest is out of your hands now. So
so I'd like to go into that, because I think there's a whole bunch of really interesting psychology and mindset and stuff that comes in at that end of the business. I think a lot of the time we talk about getting started and launching and growing and scaling, and there's a whole lot of stuff that happens at that end. But up that exit end, there's a whole other level of stuff that happens. This may not have been the situation. A lot of agency owners and business owners in general get very tied and identified with their business, right? It's their baby. And so having this conversation the other day, it's this idea of the business is your baby, and there's a lot of identity and a lot of values and all this stuff that gets wrapped up in your business and your thing. Did you have to battle with that aspect of letting go of the business? Or were you sort of on the other side where you'd sort of built it as a thing that you were going to exit and push on eventually? Sort of which camp did you sit in from that aspect of things?
So I think I definitely was in the latter. I was definitely in the camp of, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. Right. And so I always dreamed that one day I would be able to sell the business and exit. So but there's obviously a lesson there in don't name your business after yourself, because it happens. Like people, and you're 100% right. Like I see it all the time with my agency clients that I coach now. Is they get married to certain things, and then their brain, they have to fight themselves to get away from to get away from beliefs and ideas and what this business means to them and that kind of stuff. A lot of guys struggle with it. In my deal, I think I struggled slightly less than Mike did, and in one aspect, and it was because Cerebra was Mike's baby. You know, I'd come in as a merged partner a few years after he'd started. So when I came in, we were still really small, But I'd already given up my business name. I'd already given up my original agency name and become Cerebra. And that thing I wasn't precious about. What I was precious about was whether I would ever be able to earn money again doing something else.
Right.
And that's kind of terrifying, because you get good at this one thing, and you know that you're good. You get affirmation all the time. You win clients. You speak at conferences. People are like, "Oh, you're really good at this." But you go, "Cool. Like, I want to sell it. Like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And I wouldn't mind having the money in the bank. But can I do something else?" And I struggled a lot with that. I struggled with that fear of kind of being a nothing at the end of it, and having no tradable skills and having no means of making money and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, listen, like it goes away, and you've got to make the decision to be able to either go with it or not. For me, my fear of being stuck doing that for the rest of my life definitely was a bigger fear than anything else. So I was quite happy to go with it. But you do lose identity. And it's a big thing. I mentioned early on, and it wasn't accidental, that a lot of the stuff is driven by ego, and it's quite common, right? I think in order to start your own business, in order to get going, you have to back yourself. You have to believe in yourself. And as much as I said, I was quite comfortable to sell the business, a lot of my self-worth was tied up in having a team of people need me and a team of people who go like, I mean, you complain about it when you're running an agency. You complain about the fact that people always, "Oh, geez, I can," everyone comes and asks me questions, and I have to attend all these meetings, and you moan about it. But at the end of the day, when you leave and no one phones, like no one's phoning you to go, no one cares, right? It's a good sign. Mike and I always said, like when we leave, no one must miss us, and that's a sign of having built a good business, of built the right teams and hired the right people. But it hurts, it's unbelievably painful. You go from being the king of the castle to a guy who has money in the bank and nothing to do, and that I found quite challenging. And I've seen it with other guys who've sold agencies. Like I think when I did it, a lot of people reach out and you build that network. So I've spoken to a lot of people who've gone through this, and everyone struggles with it, and it's amazing. Yeah. Like you'd think we'd be mature enough to separate it, but like psychologically we're not. We get tied up, and it becomes precious, and I think most people, when they go, "Oh, you sold to WPP," most people ask immediately. They go, "Oh, how was it selling to WPP?" Like with this, they've got this thing, and they're waiting for you to go, "Oh, it was awful," and WPP was painful, and it wasn't. We had the best experience. Like we had a really good experience. But I think Mike and I both knew that it was their business, and you have to allow it to become their business, and you have to protect your earnout at the same time as being a responsible adult and going, they bought this business, and part of our promise was to leave them a good business, and that's it. But you have to let go of being precious, and a lot of guys didn't. A lot of guys, they were like, "Oh, WP come and force all this stuff," and you're like, they're not forcing stuff on you. Like they've acquired you. Like, what did you think you could take the money and keep the business? Like you don't get to do that, right? And so I like anyone. I'd encourage anyone who's considering doing the selling process is like have a few very real chats with yourself beforehand around your willingness to allow someone else to make decisions within your business, and change the name, and implement processes and procedures, and change the culture, because the culture will change, and the culture will change when you're gone, especially. And you've got to know that you chose the money. Like, sorry, but it's a very blunt way of looking at it. But if you don't want that, then don't take the money.
Yeah, so be careful what you wish for is what comes to mind for me, right? Sometimes what you wish for isn't, if you're not prepared for. Like I said, there's a myriad of just human psychology that you don't recognize until stuff like this happens. And then it all comes at once. You're like, oh, holy shit, I didn't know I felt that. I didn't know I was so tied to the name. I didn't know. I really, really like the, you talked about that social thing. That was something I sort of hadn't really considered. But yeah, it's just the social bonding, right? And you're the head of the clan. You're the leader. People rely on you. You've got all that kind of social stuff. And that goes away. So it's really, really interesting. And then also you've gone from, on top of all of that, you're now gone from being a business owner to an employee, essentially.
Yeah.
You're sort of working for someone else. How did you find, again, sounds like you had kind of the gears in motion mentally to deal with it. How did you find that sort of, you had about 2 or 3 years in that where again, you were conscious of, this is not my business anymore, but I've got to hit certain targets. I've got to do certain things to make sure this goes through the way I need it to. How did you manage that? And how do you sort of coach others in managing that part of the exit?
So they're actually slightly different. The way that I managed it and the way I coach it are slightly different. So the reason being is the management from our side was relatively easy because WPP had come to us and because we had 2 deals on the table, which I could absolutely recommend if you sell to 2 people and then choose, because having 2 people competing gives you power in the negotiations. Yeah. And so part of one of our conditions from the negotiation point of view is that we retained a high level of autonomy within the business, and legally, you're in an earn-out, and so legally you're allowed to protect your right to earn out. So if your acquirer starts trying to force measures that limits your ability to earn profit, like you can stand up to that, right? But the pressure is always there. From day one, it's like, hey, like here, please submit your forecasts and your projections and head counts and you start getting controlled around. You can't just hire people. You need to have permission and that kind of stuff. So for us, we had it quite easy in the sense that WPP said to us, and they were very clear. They said, guys, as long as you're hitting your numbers, like life will be very easy. If you start missing your numbers, then they start getting involved. And so we had our targets, we had our projections laid up, basically the promises that we made when we were selling the business, that we said, this is the numbers we think we're going to do over the next 5 years, which is obviously a complete guess, but you build your projections based on that, and you build your projections based on where you are, and you submit that into the funnel, and it goes to Paris and then to London and then New York and wherever the reporting lines go. Yeah. But essentially is the agreement that we had with them was, as long as we're hitting our numbers, they're okay. And they have specific ratios of like ratios between staff, staff salaries and revenue that you can't exceed, so that to make sure you're not overstaffing. But it was actually very basic kind of guidelines. And they were absolutely true to that. They left us alone. I think we had like monthly or quarterly finance calls where we got onto a 15-20 minute group call with the finance team, and they asked basic questions going, how's this client? How's this client? How's this client? Okay, guys, listen, everything's looking great. Thank you. We'll chat next quarter, type of thing. So we had it pretty easy, partly because we negotiated that, but also partly because we were delivering on what we said we were going to do. And as long as you're doing that, they have no reason to get involved. But they did say, like, guys, if you start missing these targets, if you can't deliver on this, like, we're going to have to get involved. And as I said, like, they're very good with their ratios of health. Like, they have their measures and they go, guys, you've got to stay within these parameters. So they've got comparisons, as I said, between head count and revenue and that kind of stuff. If you can't bring your business, but you're always going to be out of whack. Like, trust me, you're going to be out of line. So you're going to have to bring certain of these things back into line. And if you can't do it, they'll get involved, right? Like they're quite non-negotiable about that, because that's how they know how to run these things. They know how to run agencies to make. They really do. Like, they're incredibly good at it. But they're incredibly good at running agencies as a business, not necessarily running it within your environment, with your staff, with your clients and stuff like that. And their impersonal approach can often feel a little bit offensive to people who've built a very personal business. But you have to accept they're really good at what they do, and you've sold the business. Don't sell the business unless you're okay with that. But they are going to come in, and the reality is that you're most likely not going to be there forever. They know that, but they are going to own your business forever.
Yeah.
And so it's their business now. They do get to make those decisions, and I believe that part of your responsibility is to hand over a really good business, is to fulfill your side of the bargain and hit your targets and reach your numbers and deal with it. But I think a lot of guys, anyone who starts telling you bad stories about their deal, I almost never blame the acquirer. I would almost always blame the owner, and potentially the misunderstanding of what they were getting into, or they went in with a way too romantic a notion of what this was, etc. But these acquirers are all the same, and they're uniform in their behavior, and so they're not harsh on one agency and lenient on another. They're just the way they are. And all that matters is how you respond to it. You can only control that. You can't control them. You can't change them. You can't do any of that stuff. You can just control how you respond to it. And it's and that's critical. So, but again, as I said, a lot of it had to do with our strength in the negotiation. We said to the guys, as long as we're here, we're going to keep the name because we believe it's a strong part of our ability to win business. And they were like, no, that's fine, But during the earnout, they were already telling us this is how we're going to change and when we're going to change, and we had to, they're going to push, and you have to kind of moderate with them a little bit. They want to merge offices. They want to do what they do. They want to bring together expense bundles, and they don't want 3 different offices and 3 different rents. They want to bring that together. So they're always looking to optimize, always looking to combine and merge and bring that kind of stuff together. For us, because we'd negotiated a relatively high degree of control over the business still, we were able to say yes or no or go with it as we would, which I think it was a critical step, a critical win from our part.
Yeah, it sounds like that was a good major stepping stone for you, just to get all that stuff lined up really well, where you had somebody else, you had that bargaining chip, you had that competition going on. So I think that, as you said, that's a really ideally that's a great setup. Listen, if you can sort that out.
If you don't fake it, if you don't just say guys, these are part of conditions, and you've got a very strong argument for it, right? And the argument is that I'm the one who got us here, or we're the ones that got us here, right? I'm the person that people phone and invite to pitches, and I'm the company that attracts this level of talent. We attract these clients. We do this. You've definitely done something right up until that point.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't want to acquire you. So you do actually get to stand up and go, guys, this is the way that I want to do it. 100% do that during the negotiation, right? But once the negotiation's done, just I'm quite strict. I'm quite firm on it. There's a level of maturity that is required to accept that you've now made a choice, and you have to live with that choice, because it's going to be an earnout. No one's going to put money in your pocket and say okay, it's cool, you can leave. Mike and I were both we were both free to leave the moment we signed the deal, but we would have lost a major portion of our earnout. So it's done that way for a very specific reason, and the specific reason is to give them enough time and you enough time for you to earn out on future growth, but at the same time build a business that they can run without you. That's what this is about. But the two work together. If you're working, if you can't have one without the other, you can't earn out, you can't hit your maximum earn out and leave a bad business for them. It doesn't work. If it's going to be a bad business, you're going to miss your earn out.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. They're literally buying that transition period, and it's
Yep.
said you've made your bed, you got to lie in it to bring it right down to a euphemism. But it's kind of the thing, like you've made the deal. As long as like we were saying, it's very important to be very, very clear on what the expectations are and what's, what you're giving up. But then also, I'm giving up these things because I'm getting this if I do the right things.
Absolutely.
And it's not you haven't sold and you just get the money and run. It's an earn out, and you've got to earn your way out of the business.
And when we like as agency owners, we're so used to a high degree of autonomy. We're so used to being the people who make every decision and dictating everything to everyone. To suddenly being dictated to hurt sometimes. It hits us square in the ego. But again, like there's that thing to go, or Mike and my approach to it was like, wow, there's so much to learn here, and you have to give WPPs of the world credit because they know what they're doing. Like they really do know what they're doing most of the time. They may not understand your specific industry. For us, like very few people within WPP when we sold the business understood social, understood what we did or how we did it and stuff like that, which was great for us because we got to travel the world and go talk about it to a lot of different offices and that kind of stuff. But that's why they bought us. They bought us because we were the experts in that space, and they wanted to turn us into a behemoth. I mean, it's not. I left at the end of 2016. I think Mike left, probably like mid 2018, somewhere around there. And the Cerebra, they don't trade as Cerebra. It became Wunderman Thompson Digital, or it became Wunderman Digital, and then it became Wunderman Thompson Digital.
Yeah, right.
But it still exists, and it's a big business now. Like it's a really big business, like well beyond what we built it into, because the right people are there, and they're running with it, and they're flying. And I'm immensely proud of it. I love the fact that it sounds so cheesy, but it's that like it'll always be our snowball at the middle, no matter how big the snowball gets. Like we were the guys who built the snowball together and pushed it off the cliff. And I think you have to embrace the fact that you must want that business to do well for your acquirer, because it serves you. Like they're not the enemy. They're paying you good money for your business, or they should be. And and you have a responsibility to hand over a good business. Like there's I don't know. Like I think if you're not mentally prepared to accept that, don't sell your business. Like you'll make the money anyway. Selling your business is not the only way to make money. Like carry on with your projections and your targets, grow your business and declare dividends. It'll take you slightly longer, but at the end of it, you'll probably make as much money and you'll still own the business and you'll have autonomy. So it's not the only route, but it's a fast route. If you want to make money, and if you're determined that you want to go do something else with your life, which is, for me, that was my thing. Like I didn't know what I wanted to go do, but I knew I didn't want to do that. I left at my 15-year anniversary of having run an agency, and 15 years running an agency. It comes pretty close to killing you. Like it's a high stress environment. You can only draw all the money out of your access bond to pay salary so many times through the ups and downs of your agency before you kind of go, guys, I often use the gambling analogy and go, it felt like I was at the roulette table, and I kept like spinning, I kept doubling up on it and trying to win, and WPP came along, and it was an opportunity to just cash out once and just like put some money in the bank. I'm happy to start gambling again with other businesses. I've invested in businesses, I've started new businesses. I'm happy to kind of go back to the table and see and build new things. But I just couldn't handle the fact that my entire life was still on that table, and that if I lost it, I lost everything. And the older I got, the fear of losing everything, going back to scratch, just got worse. So it sounds weird, but my sales motivation was more defensive and negative than positive. But I'm actually okay with that because it was legitimate. I don't think it makes me feel weak. It made me feel like I was 15 years into this thing, and and I was still claiming a salary as though I was an employee. I knew I knew I didn't want to carry on. So it was, as I said, it was a great option and a great exit for me. But if that isn't your route, and I've worked with a lot of my coaching clients, they've got agencies that they can't sell because it is them, and they still feel stuck. And a lot of the guys I coach with them to kind of, you can retire out of your business. You can get it down to 1 day a week or 2 days a week, and you can carry on with your life and still make as much money. For the most small medium agencies, that's generally the route. Or to merge and try to become a big enough entity that you get onto the radar of some of the bigger guys. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of giving your entire life to these things. I don't think there's enough reward at the end of it to justify that.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the burnout rates in agencies. I mean, I was looking at some the other day, and the big incumbents, it's not small. It's 77% burnout rates in big agencies. Yep. So it's that is part of the industry if you don't recognize how to handle that stuff. And like I said, I did 15 years as well, and 15 years of famine and feast. It takes a certain type of person to actually be able to cope with that and actually come out alive at the back end. So that's where I'd like to take the next part of the conversation and kind of wrap is off the back of that. You did exit. You didn't know where you wanted to go, what you wanted to do. But I love that you said you saw that bigger entity coming in as a learning experience to go, how do they do this? What can I learn from this? What can I take? Take me through from there to today. How did you transition out of that into coaching? And what did you take out of that experience that you now bring back to your coachees, to your clients, to help them through similar processes of building up a business?
Cool. So as I said, I left Cerebra at the end of 2016. My plan was to take 2017 off and do nothing. I had 2 young kids. So I had a 6-month-old and a 2.5-year-old kids at home. And my wife wanted to get back to work, and so it was good timing that I just went, okay, cool. I'll kind of be a stay-at-home dad. I'll take a sabbatical year essentially and try and figure things out. It wasn't long into my sabbatical year that I started getting pretty bored, and which is fine. Like I was enjoying it, but in my head I was going to play like lots of golf and go fishing a lot, and I was doing a lot of looking after my kids and didn't play golf as much as I'd hoped. And so I was like, well, if this is what it's going to be like, I may as well be working. But the coaching thing was purely accidental. There was a few smaller agencies that I'd been working with during my Cerebra years that I'd come to know the guys really well and respected them, but they were small agencies. And I had two of those agencies reach out to me and go, listen, like now that you've left Cerebra, please can you come and help us? We're just struggling. We're not sure how to do this thing. And because I still didn't want to do any work, I was quite adamant that I didn't want to get stuck back into agency work. So I just said to them, I said, guys, listen, like I'll do coaching, but I'm not going to be a consultant. I don't want to come in and do work for you. I don't want to do projects and that kind of stuff, but I'm happy to tell you and coach you how to be better at this. And so when I sat with him, I said, I'm going to charge you for my time, but I'm a coach, not a consultant. Like you got to imagine it like a sports coach. I'm the guy who played at the highest levels for a number of years. I know a significant amount about how this game works. And I'm happy to give you all of that IP. But my job is to make you better at running your business, not to take away your pains. In fact, my job is to expose your pains and make you confront them and deal with them. But when I leave a session, like when the whistle blows and you run on the field, you're running on alone. I'm not coming on with you. Like it literally is that sporting coach analogy. So,
nice.
And it was, I don't want to come off as sounding too lazy, but I was trying to avoid leaving meetings and having tons of agency stuff to go and do and that kind of stuff. Because I didn't want that. But the coaching thing worked out. It ended up being better for me to just say to guys, listen, you have to do this. It's your business. You have to step up. You have to learn the skills that are going to be required to do these things. I'll help you with it. I'll tell you what you need to do. We can build the models together and stuff. But I loved the fact that a lot of what I was able to coach these guys, I learned through WPP. You know, none of the softer stuff. You know, if you imagine, if there's anything that has subtlety or softness or caring,
It wasn't that.
That probably wasn't from WPP. So, you know, that things like, you know, like culture and that kind of stuff, a lot of those things, and also the specific skills around the industry that you've chosen, or the subset within the marketing space that you've chosen to specialize in. Even that with my clients, I don't really get involved in. I tend to say to guys, if you're like video experts or AI or augmented reality, whatever your speciality is, like I actually not that fussed. I don't need to be an expert in that. My job is to tell you how to make money if you're selling time. And for the most part, these guys are agencies. They're selling time and they have no idea how to make money doing that. And it's actually practical, like the stuff that WPP take you through, the projections, the ratios, the formulas, the formats, all of that stuff that we had to adapt to, that we had to change our business into how to report correctly into a listed entity, was brilliant. Like, it was amazing getting to learn all of that kind of stuff. But it was also, at the same time, it was incredibly valuable, because way too few agencies know how to do a health check on themselves from a financial perspective, right? It's all gut feel. It's going, how are we feeling right now? But what I can tell you, and you mentioned now about burnout rates and that kind of stuff. My particular bugbear with agencies, and it's the thing like I tend to attack hardest, and probably I shouldn't attack it, but I get riled up over it, is agencies allow themselves to be in a submissive, abused state by clients, and they pass that off onto their employees. And I can't handle it. Like I lose my mind over it, because it isn't actually necessary. But everyone just goes, oh, that's just the way that it is. And we write it off as though it's as inevitable as death and taxes. And it's not inevitable. There are a ton of things that you can do to not exist to be an abused entity by clients. If you allow it, absolutely, clients will take advantage of it, but you don't always have to allow it. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do there. And a lot of my coaching focuses on achieving that, because you can't make money if you're allowing people to walk all over you. And the only way you can make money as an agency, if you're allowing clients, or if you are in abusive relationships with your clients, is to pass that abuse onto your employees. And I think that's horrific. Like
it becomes systemic.
It does, but it's industry wide. Except agency owners blame clients for being abusive, and I'm like, but you just pass it on to your employees. So like, who's the abusive one here? Like, at a certain point, someone has to stand up and fix it, and it has to be the owner. There has to be the owner of the agency. So, but a lot of fixing it comes from an understanding of how to make money selling time, and how to hire correctly, and how to do forecasts and projections, how to do, and like, I love the, like this is why I love, chatting to you, like, peak performance and predictable growth show, right? If you can perform at your peak, and if you can predict your growth, then you don't need to allow abuse to happen, right? If it's, I spoke about it the other day. The reason why it happens is because clients have an abundance of choice in who to work with, and you have scarcity in opportunities. And pure economics dictates that you will be the weak one in that relationship. But there's two things you can change. If you can increase the number of opportunities that you have, right, then you have strength. Because if a client's like, if a client is being abusive, you can fire them and just, there's another one waiting, right? So if you have an abundance of opportunity, and if you can reduce your client's abundance by specializing in a specific technology, or a specific subset of marketing, or a specific industry, like we were the social media experts. We did nothing else. Like, no, everyone was like, why don't you be a digital agency? And we were like, no, there's hundreds of those, but there's no one just being a social media agency.
Yeah.
And we want to own that. We want to 100% own that space. Because we did, we won a far higher percentage of new business opportunities. We had abundance.
Yeah.
And because we had an abundance of opportunities, when clients would go, you get sent through to their procurement department, you just laugh. You just go in with a smile and you go, but I'm not discounting this. This is what we charge. We hire the best people, and the best people cost money. And these are the margins we're aiming to make. And this is what our rates are. And if you don't like it, like, go and choose the second guys who came second in the pitch if you want. And we were happy. We were happy to not discount because we had another client waiting if these guys weren't coming on board. And that's just how it worked. But we had to earn that. You have to fight. You have to fight for that.
Yeah.
And most agencies don't. Most agencies are like they fit into the victim role way too quickly.
Yeah. It's simple but sophisticated advice there. It sounds sort of simple on the surface. Don't be the victim and play that hand, but there's a sophistication to how to actually kind of manage that. And I think that is super important. So it does become systemic when you're getting kind of shat on. Tendency can be to pass it down the line. You pass that.
And listen, I mean, like I made that mistake plenty of times, right? I mean, listen, like, if any of my former employees are listening to this, like, they're going to be like, oh, Craig wasn't always like this. And I wasn't. Like, I was the victim enough times, and I passed on the pain enough times. But you learn over time. But Chris, I mean, you'll understand this from a coaching perspective as well. Like, what you need to do is almost always quite simple and self-explanatory. Like, how to do it is way harder, right? But if you have an abundance of opportunities, if you're lead generating tactics, if you're generating lots of leads as a business and you're creating opportunities from those leads, you can just quote what you want to quote, because you don't have to have 100% success rate. You don't have to win clients. But everyone listening to this knows that the moment you're doing a quote for a client and you know that you have to win this piece of business, you're discounting it without them even asking you to discount it. And then you've already discounted it, then you send it to them, and then they ask you to discount it, and you're like, oh shit.
Like, you're bringing that energy to the table as well.
I'm in trouble here. Like,
you show up with that.
You didn't buffer in for that. You end up having to discount it twice because you did it out of weakness, and then they did it out of habit. They asked you out of habit, and now you've had to discount twice. But if you desperately need that business, you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
So as I said, the what is always easy. The how you do it is way more complicated, and I guess that's why we have jobs, right? That's how we make our money, is helping people with the intricacies of it. Helping them figure out how to do it in a way that works for them, in a way that suits their specific business or their style, personality, etc.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah, amazing. Really, really, really good advice. And I've really enjoyed going through that kind of end of the business, that exit phase, because I think it's a big one that doesn't probably get talked about that much. But there's a whole lot of really interesting, sort of and fascinating stuff that happens, sort of psychologically, emotionally, and technically, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens at that end of a business, which is really cool to know about. Particularly whether you're at that stage or not, it's good to know that is what your future might look like, no matter where you are in the agency, and that there's somebody like Craig out there that's been through it before, has learned the lessons the hard way, and can take you through and sort of hold hand you through what not to do and what to do to make it happen. I recognize we're well over the 20-minute mark. We're sort of budging 45 minutes, mate. No, but it's been super, super valuable.
You get me started talking
any other way.
Trouble,
No, it's been incredible and super valuable. If people do want to get in touch with you, mate, and they're sort of at that point at the business or at any stage of their business, and they just want someone to step in and say, hey, here's how you do this stuff, where's the best place for them to find you?
CraigRodney.com. I've got a cool button there that you can book a 30-minute coffee Zoom with me.
Nice.
Anyway, I'm happy. Anyone can do it. We'll do 30 minutes chat and see if there's something there that I can help with. Otherwise, I'm Craig Rodney on everywhere. It is Craig Rodney on LinkedIn, Clubhouse, Twitter, Instagram. Wherever you go, there's going to be a Craig Rodney. It'll be me.
Love that. Love a succinct name that nobody else has. Great for branding. Yep. Craig, been super valuable, mate. I've really loved this chat. Really appreciate you coming on the show and dropping all that value and knowledge. And I'm sure that people are going to get a lot of value out of this and a lot of tips and tactics on how they can approach this stuff.
Amazing. Thanks for having me. It's been an absolute blast.
Absolute pleasure. And thanks everyone for tuning in as always, wherever you are. If you're out in the podcast universe, if you're catching this on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all over social, wherever you are, thanks for dropping by. We'll see you on the next one. Hope this has been valuable. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in.